All right, we're coming at you live from the living room here at home. First listener question, really happy to get a request here from Lucy Decker. She's asking for some Unit 4 Area Study 2 case studies, which is a magnificent question. It's not something that we've looked as closely at as we have at other case studies. And there's a little bit of a reason for that. That is mainly because in this area of study, we know that now, which we didn't know at the start of the year, that this area of study is going to be assessed in the 10 marker, in one of the 10 markers, and in your source analysis. So the option for you to insert your own your case studies into some of your questions comes potentially in the longer 7 marker that you're going to get at the end of the source analysis, and also in the second 10 marker. That's where you're going to have a chance to use your own case studies, but it's not a significant amount of marks, especially when compared to area of study 1 or the areas of study in Unit 3. So it's a bit more niche. Where you may need your case studies and what is outlined in the study design is that we need to analyse responses to issues and crises and evaluate the degree to which Australia cooperates with China, PNG and the USA. Now, these two lines could form the basis of a 10-mark question where you're evaluating Australia's ability to cooperate with other nations, and you may be asked, say, to analyse responses to issues, a response that China had to an issue and then a response that Australia had to an issue. I split this into 2 different parts, I think, where we're going to get the most bang for our buck when it comes to case studies in this unit. That's in challenges to relationships, and that's in responses to a regional issue. So our challenge to our relationship with the US is balancing US and China. You'll find that on page 302. Our challenge with China is our competing security interests. They want parts of the South China Sea, and we don't want them to have parts of the South China Sea. You may find that on page 325 of the textbook. And Papua New Guinea's, the challenge between us and Papua New Guinea is how linked we are going to be as far as our foreign policy goes and our alliances go. You'll find some information on that on page 277. The responses to a regional issue. Now, what a regional issue is can be quite broad. There's quite a wide scope for what you might consider a regional issue. So some of these we've looked at in the first area of study, so there's a nice bit of overlap. One regional issue that we might look at is China's challenge to Australia in the Pacific. So that's with Papua New Guinea. So we can look at how China are now looking to have aid programs and support some of the Pacific nations who have been up to this point primarily supported by us as the kind of middle power in the region, by Australia. So one challenge is how do we react to that? And so you can use the Pacific Step Up for that challenge, for that response. The assertiveness of China in the South China Sea again, so that's a regional issue. China throwing their weight around in the South China Sea is a regional issue. So how did Australia respond to that? You can use AUKUS as a response to that one. And you can jump on page 307 for some more detail on that. And then we've also got another regional issue we could talk about is COVID. And our response to that was I've written there, Australia blamed China, but what really happened was we requested a sort of independent review, which reading between the lines was us looking to blame China. And that came with some sanctions on certain products. There's more detail of that on page 319. So there are your case studies that you might use for Unit 4 Area Study 2. As mentioned, you're going to be able to use these in your 7 marker in the source analysis, and you're going to be able to use them in your Unit 4 10 marker. So important to have a couple of up your sleeve, but I would suggest that these are case studies that you would know well from Area of Study 1. But always good to have some extras. Now, a little cheat code for this, and I've noted a lot of you have done this, but when you do your practices for your source analysis, you are getting a lot of case study information out of those source analyses. I've noticed that people have used that in different writing, which is fantastic. So when you do a source analysis and you're learning about, say, there's a source about the Pacific Step Up, or there's a source about Australia's aid work in East Timor, you can use that in your 10 marker. You can use the knowledge that you gain from doing those practice source analyses in your 10 marker. So I think that's a really helpful way to learn some of these case studies. And you can certainly use the sources that you'll see in practice exams and in practice source analyses to help build a knowledge for your Unit 4 Area Study 2 case studies. So hope that helps. Thanks again for the question, Lucy. I look forward to a few more requests as they come in.